Okay, cool. So as we started this, Jay kind of gave the high level story. He's right. We talk about generations a ton in B2C. I think like in my personal life and my personal social, I see constant content on behaviors, how Gen Z is different than millennials. We see it everywhere. But in B2B, we almost never talk about it. We talk about job titles, industries, company size, tech stacks, and we kind of pretend that people magically become a different species when they get to work. So at some point late last year, we started having a conversation at Data Axle, and we asked ourselves a pretty simple question. If generational differences shape how people want to buy in everyday life, why wouldn't they shape how people want to buy at work? So instead of guessing, we went and asked. We surveyed more than 450 B2B buyers across generations to understand how they think about buying, what builds their trust, and what really motivates them to make a purchase. And so what we found is that generational differences absolutely do show up in B2B. However, it's not always the way marketers expect. So we're going to start with what I'm calling a moment of honesty. In a few moments, we're going to launch a poll. Because most teams have assumptions about who their buyers are, I know we certainly do. Even as a data company, we still have some assumptions, but far fewer are actually mapping the humans inside their buying group. And if you can't see the people, it's really hard to market to them in a way that's actually useful. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you saw this yesterday, but does everybody remember the old Ozzy Osbourne versus used to be Prince Charles, now King Charles meme of they're the same persona, but very different people? So this is our B2B buyer version. If you have traditional B2B account and contact data, these two people look identical, but they're not. So let's start this off with a poll. Everybody work on being honest on this, no judgment. Do you actually know the generational mix of your buyers? And let's see what we get. Yeah. So as we're running the poll, I'll tell you this, we did it internally. And one of the things we learned really quickly is that we also had a lot of assumptions, and we weren't using even our own data in the way that we could to better understand our audiences. This is exactly why we did this research, because like you all, a lot of teams believe generational differences don't really matter in B2B. We're so overwhelmed. We're so focused on finding the right accounts and the right people within the accounts. We forget that it's actually a whole human, whether they're at work or they're at home. And the data tells us a pretty different story than what traditional B2B would tell us about generational impact on buying behaviors. Cool. I'm learning new technology as we're doing this, so y'all bear with me. Okay, so here's where this gets really real in B2B. I think we all know that buying is harder than it used to be. Deal cycles are longer, the committees are bigger, and now those buying committees are also cross-generational. That means you're not marketing to a buyer persona. You're marketing to a group of humans who grew up in totally different worlds. And the workforce shift is making that really unavoidable. Gen Z has now officially, for the first time, surpassed boomers in the labor force. Over the next decade or so, that mix is going to keep shifting. So if you're still building messaging and journeys and campaigns for one default buyer persona for that HR administrator we just saw, it's going to feel increasingly out of sync with the people that are actually making decisions. Because today's buying committees are people that grew up with a smartphone in their hand and people who built careers off of their Rolodex. So here's the important nuance. What I'm not saying is that everything is different. Throw out your playbooks and your fundamentals. Across generations, some of the fundamentals do still matter. People still want relevance. They still care about clarity. They want to trust you. They want to feel understood. But how each generation defines value and how they want to be engaged, it differs pretty sharply. So the playbook can't be one size fits all either. Same deal, same buying group, different people, different generations within it that are going to need different things. So let's walk through what the data actually told us. Gen Z tends to surprise people a little bit in B2B, I think. Yes, they are hyper connected. I don't think that part's a surprise. They move easily between professional and social spaces. They expect personalization. And I know this crowd will like this one. Email is still a big channel for them. But here's the part that really matters. For all their digital native behavior, they do not want automation to replace relationships. They value direct access. They care about responsiveness. They want to know there are real humans on the other side of every engagement. For Gen Z, technology is the doorway, but it's not the destination. They expect the efficiency of digital communication and the accountability of people. Our millennials, shout out to the millennials in the room, or Zennial if you want to call yourself. I think it's really important to distinguish those of us that are elder millennials. We are one of the most influential buying groups in B2B today. And I can validate this. We are deeply allergic to fluff. We want expertise, education. We can see your BS a mile away. And we want to know how things actually work. This is the generation that rewards companies who enable them. If you help them build a strong internal case, make them look smart, help them reduce internal risk, you win. If your marketing is built on slogans, though, instead of substance, we're going to tune out. For Gen X, they quietly sit at many of your real approval seats. I think there's an assumption that oftentimes the financial buyer, the person that's signing on the dotted line, is going to be a boomer. And I don't think that's true based on the data that we're seeing. Certainly that can be the case from time to time, but that assumption is where you're going to have challenges. Very often it's someone like Jay, it's a Gen X, it might even be a millennial. You'll need to look at the data for your own specific buyers, but we often see Gen X in these approval seats, and they are not the loudest one in the room. They've lived through every marketing trend. Their tolerance for your noise is razor thin. They want you to show your work, prove it to me. They need clarity, evidence, follow through, and they don't want to be impressed. They don't want to be dazzled. They want to be convinced. And then we have our boomers. Boomers are the most trust-driven group, probably the least surprising thing anyone's going to say this whole conversation. Reputation matters to them, stability matters to them, and professionalism still matters to them. They are looking for partners that will still be there after the sale, that are not just trying to sell them and leave. They are looking for true partnership. And they want to make decisions feeling safe, clear, and grounded in that relationship with their future partner. They're not looking for the loudest brand, and they are looking for the most credible decision they can possibly make based on evidence, stability, and professionalism. So, 4 pretty different profiles, a couple of things that are similar. But as I said earlier, the good news is you don't need 87 different playbooks now for every micro generation, a millennial and a zennial one, every persona, every vertical. Across all of the generations, there are a few things that are remarkably consistent. Email is still a universal constant. We saw every single generation, every respondent we had, the highest response to how they want to be communicated to, what channel they trust for information from brands, it was email. We also saw that relevance is non-negotiable. Don't send me generic messaging. We've all been saying this forever, but we're hearing across the board, you've got data to back this up internally. If you need to go back to your CMO and tell them that you need to work on personalization and segmentation across all 4 generations, B2B buyers said relevance is non-negotiable. The third one is my favorite point. I think we've all in the last few years in B2B been having conversations about transparency and pricing in the buying process. I think a lot of us, myself included, have an assumption that this push towards transparency and having pricing available on the website instead of having to have a conversation with a BDR and two conversations with a rep before you finally find out how much that HR software is going to cost you. I think there's an assumption that that's coming from more younger buyers being involved in the process. And the reality of our data was, yes, everyone cares. The younger generations do, millennials do, Gen Z does. But Gen X and boomers actually valued transparent pricing in the sales process the most. It's shocking, I think, a little bit. We're also living in a digital era, and I think everybody knows that. But no matter who they are, they're looking for human connection. So this is my favorite part of where it gets fun, though. The generational differences. The biggest differences between these groups show up not in channel, as we just said, you can still send email to everyone, but in cadence tolerance, in how those channels are experienced, what kind of content feels valuable, and what actually motivates their engagement with your brand. So let's use a specific example here. Gen Z is far more tolerant of frequent, lightweight touch points, especially across a mix of digital spaces. They move fluidly between professional and social channels, their TikTok, their LinkedIn, their personal email, their work email, and they engage most when outreach feels responsive, personalized, and interactive. Millennials, though, are going to engage most through depth. They respond to educational content, practical guidance, experiences that help them build a point of view, look like the expert in the room internally within their organization, and justify their decisions. Gen X has a much lower tolerance for that volume. They want fewer touches with higher signal. They engage when content is concrete and the channels are used really purposefully. And the messages clearly answer why this message, why this brand, why now. And then your boomers, again, are the most trust anchored. And so they're going to respond to less frequency, more credibility, reputation, consistency, relationships, and professionalism all matter more than novelty. So what does that look like in real life? Let's use a very specific tactical example. This reality of having 4 generations that you are likely marketing to, whether you have the data to prove that today or not, means you might still send the same email newsletter to all your B2B buyers, but you might orchestrate it and what surrounds it a little differently. You might intentionally limit the number of promotional touches your boomer buyers get in the week or 2 before that send, so that when it hits, it actually earns their attention. And at the same time, you might break that same newsletter into a smaller, more conversational set of pieces and share them across additional spaces for your Gen Z buyers, maybe on social media as well as the email, because they don't have a problem with that higher frequency as long as it feels relevant and human. For your millennial audiences, you might anchor that campaign around a deeper guide, a walkthrough, or a practical use case, and prioritize that in your newsletter. On the Gen X version, you might lead with your clearest proof point first, your customer testimonial, your case study, your third-party reviews, and reduce the noise with everything else. Same core message, same email newsletter strategy, different execution and orchestration. That's what it's actually going to mean to market to 4 generations at once. And then this is where generational insights really stop being an interesting party trick or factoid and start changing how you actually build your marketing engine, not your one-off campaigns or tactics. Because once you start seeing these differences play out in cadence, content, in what motivates engagement, you're going to realize pretty quickly that a lot of traditional B2B structure just isn't enough anymore. Segmentation can't stop at company and job title. Campaigns can't be designed for a single HR administrator persona, as we saw at the beginning of this conversation. You start designing differently. You're going to think more about who is actually inside your buying group and how those whole humans experience your brand over time. You're going to spend a little bit less time optimizing those one off campaigns and more energy building connected journeys that adapt based on who it actually is that's engaging and what they care about. It also forces a more honest conversation about AI. You can't activate modern marketing if you don't understand job titles. In modern marketing, we are all required to use AI. Full stop. It's no longer optional. You don't have the time, the resources to do things manually anymore. But AI doesn't magically fix your lack of insight about the whole human in your audience. In fact, it amplifies what you give it. So if your understanding of your buyers is shallow, AI just scales that shallow personalization, which brings us to the real unlock. To me, in my experience, the real unlock is visibility. It is not more tools. Most B2B marketers don't need more tools. They don't need more AI. They don't need more platforms. They lack the ability to clearly see the people, the whole humans inside their audience, because buyer roles just don't tell the whole story. Full profiles of whole humans do. And that's what's been missing from most B2B marketing systems. Data Axle's profile fuse is how we bridge that gap. It connects professional and personal identities so you can understand who your buyers actually are, not just where they work and what their job title is, but also their generation and their hobbies, which means you can start to see generational patterns in your own audience and make smarter decisions about your marketing informed by data. And you can finally activate against those differences instead of guessing. And I want to be really clear here about why I'm sharing this. I am not here to turn this into a sales pitch. I promise. This is our one, yes, Data Axle built a thing slide. But the bigger reason it matters is because we're also using this exact mindset internally. We're actively building what I'd call a generational play inside our own marketing. Smarter segmentation, more internal orchestration, more consistent experiences, grounded in the reality that our buyers are the same humans at home. They're a millennial at home. They're a millennial at work. We're early in the process, but we're going to share what works, what doesn't, our learnings, and results as we start activating this. So if you want to follow along, I'll be posting progress on my personal LinkedIn. With that foundation in mind, let's land this on what this actually means for you. The point of today isn't that being generationally fluent in B2B buying is a fun marketing trick that you can share at the next conference. It is, and you can. These factoids are fun. But the point is that clarity beats chaos in modern B2B. When you understand who your buyers really are, you can show up with relevance. Absolutely no one has an unlimited budget these days. We all need to get more out of every email, every ad, every content asset. And ill-informed AI slop isn't going to do it. When you build a strong data foundation, AI actually becomes an advantage, not a liability. And when you design engagement around real humans instead of default HR administrator personas, marketing starts to work harder for you. And we'll end where we started. B2B, in my opinion, has a lot to learn from B2C. It's not about the hype in B2C. It's about the focus on the people, on the whole human that's buying your product. Because the companies that win next aren't going to be the ones that shout louder. They're going to be the ones who see the humans in the buying committee and earn trust with the right message in the right place at the right moment, whether millennial or boomer. And that's the new B2B buyer code. So we're dropping it in the chat. You've probably already seen it. We'll make sure we drop it again. The link to the full research and our playbook. If you want the deeper cut, believe me, you do. There's so much great information in here, and it's really pragmatic and actionable. We're excited for you to see it. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jay to tell us how he recommends that we activate all this.
Well, first of all, that was excellent. That was like, I like love. You're an excellent speaker. Good job. And everybody, please, we pinned it in the chat. I am telling you, this resource that Data Axle has, you should download this thing. It is not boring. It is super useful. And I haven't seen anything else out there on the B2B side for this kind of data. So it's pinned in the chat. So before I get going though, I wanted to ask a question, and everybody should drop their word in the chat. Is there a particular slang word like Gen Y word that you think is horrendous? Like for me, it's when my teenage daughter, I'll say something to her and she'll go, bruh, as if I'm the dumbest human alive. Is
Yeah.
there a word for you or everybody in the chat that like you just cannot take?
I knew we were going to see 6'7" immediately. 6'7", 6'7". I will tell you a small story about that one before
Okay.
I hand it back over to you. So I do not have children of my own, but I have 3 nieces,
Okay.
and they are, I guess, Gen Alpha. One of them maybe is on the cusp of Gen Z. I get a little confused. And I was talking to them recently, and I was like, all right, I had just learned about this 6'7" thing. Sorry, I don't have kids, so I didn't learn about it till this fall.
You're lucky.
What is this? What does it mean?
No.
And they looked at me and they said, it doesn't mean anything, Aunt Natalie.
Right.
It means that's super cool. That was awesome. It also means that's terrible and that's really stupid. You just have to know in the context when you use it. And I just felt like such an old. Like I just had a moment of like 87 gray hairs sprouted instantly. Like I have no idea.
Well, if anybody says to you, bruh, or the other one is what? Like the word what no longer actually means like, what do you mean? Like I'll say to my daughter or my son, like, whatever. And they go, what? As if what they're really saying is, you're an idiot. And I think you're an idiot. So just so you know, what does not mean what.
All right. I learned some things. Thank you. Teach me some more. I can't wait.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Don't learn anything from me. But now I'm about to do my part. All right, I'm about to rip through this. Here we go. Let's see what's going to happen here. All right. So unlike Natalie, who's a phenomenal speaker and is very calm and it's all delivered well, I'm the opposite of that. By the way, I'm the founder of Guru Media Hub. We put on all these events, all this stuff, all this whatever, but I also have an agency. And so we are constantly testing what is working for marketing. All right. So what I'm about to take you through, there's a lot of tactics here and a lot of tests to consider. And I don't care what I do for a living, but I want you to know where my data comes from. We aggregate all the billions of emails that we send and content that we put out there and all this stuff, the 40,000 campaigns that we do, we aggregate together. And that's where my data comes from. So I want to rip through lots of different tactics tied to this generational stuff that I think that we are all sleeping on, because we always just think of our marketing of, oh, we're going to segment by industry, by employee size, by title, by whatever in the B2B world. But this is a whole different kind of segmentation. And what we found in our data, which is wild, is that when you look at these different generations as a segment in your database, different types of offer, different types of subject lines, different types of content will actually perform differently. So let's jump into it. So first off, on an overall statement, in general, you may not be aware of everything going on out there. I'm certainly not. Someone will text me something, I'll give a thumbs up, okay? And I have recently uncovered that if you use thumbs up emoji when you're texting people, you're basically giving them the middle finger. Didn't know that. Now, when I use it, I'm kind of giving the person the middle finger in my head. So there you go. So if you get a text from me and I go I'm actually thinking something else. But that's what I'm saying. We don't always know that stuff. Yeah, who knew? I didn't know, but now I know. Now, when you're out there doing your marketing, you may say, oh, I can't do this. This is off brand. I'm a boring B2B brand. We sell, IT security products. We market to finance officers. We market to HR people. We can't say things a certain way. Okay, cool. Have all of your stuff not do well, because the buyers that are out there, which Natalie just showed you, they're not the buyers from 20 years ago. I'm sorry. And they want to be talked to a certain way. That's how you stand out, is actually by leaning in to some of these things. So for example, right, when you include in your subject line, as much as you think this is ridiculous, okay, when you include in your subject line things like chef's kiss, if you know, ghosting, TLDR, which means too long, didn't read. What you are doing is you're leaning into the language of the generations that are actually out there looking for your products and services. And this is all about testing. You're like, I can never get that approved. Okay, fine. Continue to be out there and write new webinar about HR laws. I salute you. You'll get 4 registrants and nobody will show up. If you want to break through, you have to speak a little differently. It's not off brand to act like a human. And that is the world that we live in now. And it's not about what you would react to. You are not your database. I'm sorry. It's about testing things and seeing what's going to work out there. All right. And you will see more and more and more of these phrases being used. And they will. And it stands out. Right. Now, you may not be like PacSun. Okay, fine. That's not going to do on the B2B side. We were saying, the season's new drip. But starting out with uh-oh, right, is a great example that crushes on B2B. Uh-oh, you're going to miss out. Uh-oh, you missed this one. Uh-oh, don't be somebody that's not in the know. That is how we communicate. That is the world that we are in. Okay, I want to break down different buckets here. First, I want to talk about call to action buttons and what call to action button tactics work when you think about different generations. Now, your call to action button could be the button on your email that you send out. It could be on your offer page on a landing page. It could be on your website. Your call to action button is that rectangular thing, okay, that people click on, right? There's no word in the world that bothers me more. Actually, that's not true. The word register drives me bananas. It stinks, okay? The only other word that is worse than that is the word submit. If that is what is on your call to action buttons, you should hang up on this webinar. That's the most boomer thing I ever said. But hang up on this webinar and go fix that, because that's garbage. Let's talk about what works, though, in your call to action buttons, okay? What works as an example, and this works best for Gen Z, and everything I'm about to show you here, when I say it works best for Gen Z or millennials or boomers or whatever, okay, that doesn't mean you shouldn't test it for your whole database, because you should, right? Because all of these are tests. They're not going to all work for everybody, but these are all tactics that you may not have thought about for whether it's your call to actions. I'm going to talk about subject lines in a second. They all are great tests. This test happens to work best for Gen Z. And it's this idea of false choice pairing on your call to action buttons, right? And basically what you're trying to give them is an option that they would never, ever pick. And so when you have the option that they should pick, show me how versus no thanks, I'll guess, right? When you do that, they'll be like, no, of course I'm going to pick show me how. The false choice does incredibly well. And if you test false choice pairing, what you do is, let's say somebody picks the one that says, the bad choice, right? In this case here, start my free trial or no thanks. I like overpaying for tools. Where does that go if they click on that? You have 2 options. You could flip that button and said, okay, no problem, and that's it. Or you could take them to a page, which we do quite often with our clients, that says, okay, no problem, you don't want the stuff, but here's a few more things before you pass on it. Blah, 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 a couple bullets about why it's awesome. And then you have another call to action below that that says, wait a minute, I want to reconsider, I'm in. If you do that, you will actually get a few more percentage points of people converting. So false choice pairing is a great, great tactic if you want to really go after that kind of Gen Z market. Okay. Let's talk about another call to action tactic. And this really works incredible for millennials. So if your database is made up of millennials, which a lot of B2B databases are, okay, it is this idea of community framing. Basically, what we've found in all the testing that we've done, and it also mirrors what's in the Data Axle ebook, okay, is that millennials like to do kind of like, what is going on out there? What's everybody else doing, right? It's like, you want to go, everybody's going here, I'm going to go there, right? Everybody likes to know what's going on. So when you frame your call to action buttons, instead of saying, the word says download or it says register, it would say get the playbook or see how others would do it. That is literally what's on your button. Your button doesn't need to be a word. It can be a sentence. So if you've never tested community framing on your call to action button, this is an easy, quick win test. I talk so fast. This is me trying not to talk fast. This is my second one of these today. Not healthy, Not good, not very bad. Back to what I'm saying. I always, the two flexes on earth that I think are ridiculous, no offense to people out there. Number one, as it comes to coffee, if you order black coffee and then you say why you order black coffee, you're a loser. I don't mean ordering black coffee is a loser move, but if you order black coffee, like, yeah, I found that that's kind of like my thing, black coffee, straight up. You're a loser if you have to announce that. I'm just being real. Okay. The other thing that makes you a loser, in my opinion, and that means I'm right, is that if you're like, no, I don't drink coffee. That's not my thing because I don't need it. I have internal energy. You're also a loser. Those are the two loser moves, in my opinion. Anyway, back to my nonsense. Performance framing. This works really, really well for Gen X. Okay. So Gen X, which is, I think, me, we really like to know what the hell are we going to get out of the thing. So when your call to action buttons, the actual button says see the ROI or compare options, this works really, really well for Gen X. Again, all these are great tests across the board to consider if you haven't done performance framing for your call to action buttons. All right. Another one, boomers. For any boomers out there, it's all about reassurance. That's what boomers really need. They like that human reassurance. They're scared a little bit of AI. What's it going to mean? Whatever. And when you can have your call to action button say, speak to an expert or review the details, this speaks to their need for reassurance. So understanding what your audience is and then testing some of these call to action framings can work really, really well. Okay, let's talk about subject line tactics by generation. And I promise you, I won't jabber on forever. Subject line tactics by generation. And again, this is all about, you could test this across the board. Okay. It doesn't need to be, oh my goodness, I don't know in my database who's a boomer or a millennial, so I can't do this. That's not true. You should be testing these across the board, but if your audience does skew a certain way, I would consider it. So the first one is speed framing. This is in your subject line. Gen Z, what we have found in our data, when you frame your subject lines as it relates to speed and time, Gen Z reacts. Gen Z loves, knowing that something will take a certain amount of minutes. There is no patience, right? This is like their brains have been wired that they need to move fast. There's no time for anything. There's no whatever. When I first started in my career, you didn't have calls scheduled. You didn't get meeting invites. People would just call you. Your phone would ring and you'd say, hello, right? Now it's, I need to schedule the call. The call is going to only be 30 minutes or 15 minutes. That's now the brain set, right? So having your subject line say things like, this takes 3 minutes. That's your subject line, right? Or fix this before your coffee gets cold. That crushes it. So if you've never done speed framing in your subject line, this is an awesome test that works so, so well, right? And you'll see it in all the different marketing out there when you start to actually look at your inbox a different way. There is a reason, right? There is a reason that these things are in your inboxes, then they're performing a certain way. Now, social proof, we all know, social proof is the currency of marketing. I would say there's nothing more important in all of your marketing, B2B, B2C, I don't care, nonprofit. Nothing is more important than social proof weaved into your marketing, right? And it's weaved into your subject lines. All right. So if you went to go to an Uber today, right? And the Uber came back and the car that was going to pick you up had a 3.9 rating, you would not get in that car because you would think that'd be the last car ride you ever took. Okay. So we like to think about what everybody else thinks of the thing. And if you put this in your subject line, right? How teams like yours fix this? You're like, oh, somebody else used this and it worked. What other HR leaders are doing differently? Oh, other people. I don't have my own brain. I want to know what they're doing. This stuff absolutely crushes it. Okay. By the way, negative social proof is amazing, right? I love negative social proof. Why? Because it's funny. You cannot tell me that if you walked by a coffee shop, and you saw this sign, you would not go in. I would 100% go in and I would say, I want that coffee because I want to know what the worst thing was. I absolutely want to know what the worst thing was. I would go into that coffee shop immediately. So if your company is the worst, go out there. No, don't do that. You probably get fired. So Yeah. Anyway, I'm the worst at talking slow. I know that. That's for sure. Anyway, metric anchoring. This crushes it. Why do I say that so often? Why does everything crush everything? What is wrong with me? I say crush way too much, but this does crush it. Gen X. This is perfect for Gen X. Yeah. Am I Gen X? I keep forgetting. Yes, I'm Gen X. I have a problem. Anyway, leading with a specific metric does incredible. I want to say crushes again, but I didn't do it. I didn't say it. Right? When you lead with a specific metric, this audience loves it. How brand X cut cost 27%. The real ROI of fixing this. We like to know a number. We just want to know a number. Oh, wow. This improved things by 37%. Cool. I love it. I want to do it. I want to do it because it's 37%. Metric anchoring is amazing. If you've never done this as an A/B test for your subject lines, it is an awesome one to try. Okay, for boomers, hello, really good for finance as well. Transparency signals. We love clarity. Boomers love clarity. Straight talk on pricing. What this actually costs. One of the hidden gems, which is not in this deck, which everyone should test, there are 3 words in the subject line over the last 6 months that have done incredible if you include them in subject lines. They are the words actually, truth, and real. Actually, truth, and real. So what is the real story behind whatever? What is the actual cost of whatever? What is the true cost of whatever? Because we get so many emails now that says, this is the best. This is the most amazing. This is the ultimate. We don't know what to believe. So when we say something is the actual, it's the truth or the true, right? This is a transparency signal that actually does so well. Okay. Yeah, this is kind of me because I've tried to say bet, but when I say bet, it doesn't come out right. Like my son, who's a freshman in college, he'll say something, I go, bet. He goes, you can't do that. You sound like a doofus. You actually sound like a doofus when you say bet. It is not something you're allowed to say. Like I'm not allowed to say it's giving, like it's giving whatever vibes. Okay, I'm not allowed to say that. Apparently, I'm also not allowed to say I'm dead. I like when people say I'm dead. Like something's really funny, you go, I'm dead. I think that's funny, but my 18 and 19-year-old kids say, no, you're a loser. You're not allowed to say that. And that's fair. That's valid. Anyway, whatever. Okay. Few more things. Short form video. This is what Gen Z wants. If your audience is all about Gen Z, okay, and you think that you're going to get Gen Z to download long form PDFs, the ultimate guide to blah, 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 nobody cares. Nobody wants to download the ultimate guide to blah, blah, blah if they're Gen Z. What they want, because their brains have melted, okay, is they want the TikTokification of your content. They want 60 and 90 second, vertical videos that they can see really fast. And this actually does so well. So you can't just say, okay, we have this thing, let's just put it out there and hope for the best. You need to speak to your audience in the language that they want to be spoken to. That's actually how it works. Okay, millennials love skimmable stuff, right? So again, this is all about testing different content formats. If you've not messed around with swipe files as a downloadable thing, right? Or TLDR. TLDR is secret sauce stuff in all your marketing. In your blog post, TLDR. You could have the recap up top. In your social media posts, TLDR. In your LinkedIn company posts. In your emails, TLDR. Too long, didn't read. Having that in there and then having the click through to whatever your offer is, whatever it is you're promoting, I will tell you, if you have a TLDR section, whatever you're doing, home run, you will get a lot more of your content consumed. Okay. One more thing here, and then we'll move on. Proof first. Gen X loves this, right? Gen X loves this. They love before and after. They love peer examples, the case studies. You find me somebody in Gen X that doesn't say, and we need a case study on that. You're considering a vendor and you're Gen X. I guarantee you, can we get a case study on that? Can we see a case study, please? That's what they say. That is what we do. I don't know why. It's like a reflex. It's like, oh, before we get off the call, can we get a case study? So know your audience, because that is actually what's important. Now, we're going to do Q&A. But before we do, I am not just saying this, even though it sounds cheesy. I am telling you, this guide, this thing, you want to download this thing. It's in the chat. It's pinned to the chat. Data Axle has like a gajillion data points. They're huge. They're a big company, like lots of thousands of people working there. It's crazy, right? And this guide is awesome. Not guide. It is a whole thing. Download this thing. You got it. It's right there up top. Okay. So let's bring Natalie back on and we're going to do some Q&A. Natalie, how are you?
That was awesome. You underrate yourself as a presenter. There are lots of different styles of presenting. Yours was very engaging. It was fast though. Like my blood pressure's up a
A
little.
lot, right? A lot. I've had high
Yeah.
blood pressure for 25 years and I take medicine and it's so bad. It's so bad. It's so bad. But
Maybe like 1.5 black coffees then.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
instead of
No,
2.
it's not good. It's not gonna end well. I mean, I know I know one day it will happen on the webinar. I know it. I know one day that's gonna be what happened to Jay. You don't even heard there was a webinar and he was in the middle of talking. That's what's gonna happen.
Well, good thing
Not
you tell us where you are at the beginning so we can, call the
Yeah.
ambulance. We know where to send it.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's a good point. I just share my location for every webinar. All right, let's go through some questions here that have come in. A bunch of good questions. So I'm not going to filter them because I have to read them in real time. So Natalie, in B2B, most product and service offerings are not exclusively targeting one generation, and we rarely know which customer or prospect falls into. How do you suggest going about this and testing stuff to kind of cover the generations?
Yeah. So, okay. I am not going to make it a sales pitch, but my first thing I'm going to say is go get some data to know who they are. They are whole humans. I promise you that buyer is not the job title. It is not your traditional contact attached to an account. You need personal attributes of that person. So if you could see the demographics, you could see that they are 47 years old. If you could see that they also have hobbies in golf, and they're interested in Marvel comics, I don't know. That's going to give you better ways to reach them. And it's also going to give you data to back up those recommendations. That said, as Jay said, I think you can also do some testing. If you look at some audience segmenting and use the information you do have today, and instead of having the data to back up your audience, use different playbooks for the different generations, try different types of more skimmable versus more data-backed or provable content like a use case or a case study, and see what resonates with them. It might start giving you an understanding of the type of buyers that you have. But in reality, I think we all live in a world where we don't have a ton of dollars and energy that we can put into testing without getting to quick answers. And my recommendation is you lean into getting some more of that traditionally consumer data and start appending it to your B2B data sets.
First of all, I totally agree with that. Obviously, Data Axle is perfect for that. But I would also throw in there, this will not be a perfect thing at all. But when you look at the job title and functions of the people in your database, certain functions and titles and certain employee size companies marry up to certain generations. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. So for example, in an enterprise organization, if you are, a vice president and above, it shouldn't be this way. But generally speaking, you're going to be kind of especially if you're going to bigger companies, Gen X-ish, right? Gen Y, Gen X-ish, right? And then if you're looking at, and you can dig into any title, any function. If you're looking at finance professionals at enterprise organizations, they're going to skew a little bit older. Whether that's right or wrong, it's the truth. Social media strategists, digital media people, they're going to skew younger. So if you start to kind of judge people, which is terrible, based on what you know, you're going to be able to do some of that targeting. It's not going to be perfect, but it actually will work.
It's some of what we do as marketers, right? Is we make some assumptions about people. But the thing I would add to that is, number one, true. And I'm the exception to that. I'm a SVP at a company of thousands of people, and I'm a millennial. And so there are exceptions, and data helps. The thing you can remember to do also when you're doing your testing, and maybe you can't go by data today, that's cool. I get it. Ask. When did we forget that we could just ask our audience who they are and what they care about? And are you a millennial? And does that mean that you want content more in Instagram? Like you can get first party data by just asking your audience as well.
And along those lines, I know we're going along in this, but I don't care. I think one of the biggest misses that marketers do is being intentional about tagging their click traffic. What do I mean by that? Let's say you have a newsletter that goes out ongoing. and you have different content blocks in your newsletter. And if you
Mhm.
have content blocks in your newsletter that you are intentional about certain topics, like let's say one of the content blocks is TLDR about trends in social media. I have no idea. That content block really speaks to potentially a younger audience because it says TLDR, whatever. And then whoever clicks on that, you tag them in your CRM as being a cohort within a certain, whatever. And you should be doing that type of tagging on any content in your thing that you're putting out there, because that is a great way to get, first party data that you're not necessarily asking for.
Awesome advice. I love it. I think something we often say is you start with your hypothesis. If you're going to use the TLDR line,
Yeah,
then why did you do that? Was your hypothesis that your audience was younger and that was going to resonate with them? Well, make sure you track it so you can prove your hypothesis.
I love that. Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about cadence. And this is an interesting question Amanda had, and I have no idea. How should marketers rethink cadence when engaging multi-generational buying groups?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think cadence is probably the biggest one that came out of the research that was different generation to generation. Definitely it wasn't channel. So it's a good thing to ask about. Again, if you don't know who they are, it's really hard to do. But if you can test with some segmentation based off of some of the recommendations Jay made, you're going to want to look at much less frequent for your boomers. In particular, I think the boomers told us that they were looking for emails like maybe once a month.
Wow.
Where your Gen Z, you can email them more than once a week and they're good with that. Same channel, different cadence. Millennials and Gen X are a little bit in between. They had slightly different answers. I do think you're going to want to test here. You're probably going to look at, yes, things like subject lines, but also could you do for the millennial version for that audience, could you do one per week that is more focused on a particular topic each week? And in the boomer one, if you know that you have a subset of your audience that's likely boomers, maybe you do a more curated, thoughtful, evidence-based, lots of case studies and such, longer email, but it comes once a month and they're more likely to read it because you got their attention with less frequency.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, the mindset how people feel about their inbox depending on how, their generation. I think it's just wild. Something I haven't looked at, which I need to dig into, is unsubscribes by generation. That'd be interesting.
Oh yeah.
That'd be cool.
Love that.
Basically haters. Who are they?
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. We have to wrap up here. A few things though. Number one, everybody download this thing. The link is in the chat. It's pinned in the chat. We're going to also make sure Natalie gets all the additional questions that were put in, and her and her team will be able to reply to everybody and get back to you all. And we're going to put Natalie's LinkedIn in the chat. She is an awesome person to connect with. You should drop all of your slang terms for her, and we'll see if she knows what's going on. Now, before we wrap up, what does your shirt say? I feel like it says something.
Oh yes, it's my favorite. It's probably backwards. So tell your dog I said hi. I thought, given that we're talking about millennials and Gen X and boomers, I should wear the most millennial shirt I could come up with. Like millennials tend to like dogs better than people. Millennial. I've got my like giant millennial water bottle that I'm drinking out of. So I just wanted to be a walking cliche today.
And you've done just that. And by the way, everyone now put your LinkedIn's in the chat. If everybody here wants to connect with each other, we want everyone to get to know each other, because if you are here today, you're here for a reason. You care about business to business data, which means all of you should become fast friends, and everybody here should get to know each other, help each other out. Let's all be a vibe. First, certainly connect with me on LinkedIn if you like bad memes. So Natalie, what is your parting thoughts for humanity here about all of this?
Oh gosh. Well, that's a big ask, but my parting thoughts are, what we do is hard in marketing. I'm not going to pretend that it's not, and more data isn't always necessarily better. But I found this really interesting personally. If you want to follow along and watch someone else's journey before you go try to tell your boss that you should look at data to learn the generations of your B2B buyers, we're going to be talking about our journey on my LinkedIn. We are going through the mess ourselves today at Data Axle. So stay tuned.
Love it. Big fan of Data Axle. Big fan of you. Everybody here. Yes, the slides. So right when this ends, or very close thereafter, we're going to be sending out an email that'll have the slides to everybody here, and then we're going to get the recording link. So you'll get this. If you have insomnia, you can watch this back.
Yes.
So you're going to get all of it. So it's all coming your way. And Natalie, we'll have to do this again. You were awesome. I appreciate you.
Let's do it. Maybe we'll do it in person next time soon. We can do like
Ooh,
a live webinar thing. Yeah.
love it.
Awesome.
All right, everyone. We'll see you at the next one.
Bye.